So I founded athleticism.com 25 years ago, working with amateur and professional athletes. So when our athletes are in the flow state, they're in a alpha brainwave state, which is basically they're in the zone. They can't miss. That's where we want to get them. That's all the work I do is to get them in that state. And we take them into theta to get them into the alpha when they're performing. And they're 8 to 12 hertz or waves per second. Now, the Schumann resonance, the healing pulse of the earth, that it's known to be about 7.83 hertz or waves per second. That's the resonance of the earth outside. That's why everyone says it's so important to get grounded and get outside into nature, because you get this medicinal recharge of our body battery at the appropriate level.
Welcome to Linda's Corner, where we bring more hope, healing, and happiness to the world. My name is Linda Bjork, and today we're going to be talking about how bioenergetics can affect our health. I'm delighted to welcome Justin Frandson. Justin is a leading expert in the connection between human performance and the environment. He is a renowned performance coach, the founder of athleticism.com and EMF Rocks.com. You can reach Justin at his websites, and I'll include those links in the show notes. Welcome, Justin. I'm so glad that you could join with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me on, Linda.
I am excited. I love to learn new things, and I'm excited to learn from you today. So let's say that I'm coming in this and I don't know anything about electromagnetic frequencies. I don't know how that affects me. I've never even heard of this before. Can we start from that point and just tell me, what is this and why does it matter to me?
You bet. So every living organism has a resonance. We're all electromagnetic beings and we're one with our universe. And so I always ask everyone, what is in your environment? Like, what is your environment? And it's a big question, where the environment, the answer really is everything around us. But I want to lean in on the atmosphere and the air that surrounds us, because that air travels or carries waves and particles, and those waves and particles are how we're able to communicate. And where exactly are you, Linda?
I am in the United States, Intermountain West, Utah.
Okay, you're in Utah. So I'm in Southern California. And so we're able to communicate through these waveforms that are, basically broadcasting across our airwaves. And they are one-directional waveforms. That's how we're communicating. Now, the resonance of the earth is not a one-directional waveform. So if I drop a pebble in a pond, does the splash of the pond go in a straight line to the right? No, it distributes equally in every direction. So that's a framework for us and our environment. Does our energy field, our biofield that goes out about 6 to 8 feet, go in a straight line out from my right ear? No, it goes everywhere around us. And so that's really at the net of it is how we're designed. We're one with our universe. We're made on waveforms that are unpolarized. That means they distribute equally in every direction. There's a name for them. They're called scalar waves. And to the contrary, all non-native EMFs, electromagnetic fields or frequencies, they're all one-directional waveforms or they don't work. So that's the difference between us and them.
Wow. Okay. It's so interesting when you give an example, first of all, of we are having a communication and we are not in the same room. We are actually in different states. And so we don't question that there is, some way that you and I are able to communicate through these waves that we can't see. And that we maybe, and there's no, we pick up our phone. We don't really question how it works. We don't question how things work. It just is. And yet when we're talking about our bodies and our environment and the things that we cannot see, sometimes we put up a mental block. It's like, no. The only things that matter are what I can touch, what I can see with my eyes, what I can feel. And here you're saying and explaining that just like the technology, we can use that word maybe, that allows you and I to be able to communicate is absolutely real. And these other scalar waves are absolutely real. This is scientific. This is not out in woo-woo land because I cannot see it. This is part of my experience, whether I see it or not, whether I understand it or not. So now that you're helping to bring this to my awareness and saying, you know what, not only does this exist, but there is a difference between the way that we have our man-made, which goes in one direction, versus what is native, which goes in a circular kind of a pattern, like the pebble in the pond. So now that I'm becoming aware, how does this affect me? What do I need to know to be able to improve my life experience?
Definitely. Well, let me back it up a sec and understand how we can measure these waveforms. And then once we understand the speed of them, then that really explains the difference even more. And then it'll kind of lead into how it affects us. So the speed of how we're made is really low and slow waveform. And when we're sleeping, Linda, our brainwave state is in a we call it delta or theta brainwave state is what they can measure it at. Are you familiar with those brainwave states?
I've heard about it a little bit, but I don't think I have my head wrapped around it all the way. So I would love some more explanation.
So when you're sleeping and you go into a REM sleep, where you rapid eye movement, and it's that deep restorative sleep, your brainwave state's 1 or below 1 to 8 hertz or waves per second. So if they have an EEG measuring the waveforms and the speed of your brainwave state, that's what it'll measure, really low and slow. When our athletes, so I founded athleticism.com 25 years ago, working with amateur and professional athletes. So when our athletes are in the flow state, they're in a alpha brainwave state, which is basically they're in the zone. They can't miss. That's where we want to get them. That's all the work I do is to get them in that state. And we take them into theta to get them into the alpha when they're performing. And they're 8 to 12 hertz or waves per second. Now, the Schumann resonance, the healing pulse of the earth, that it's known to be about 7.83 hertz or waves per second. That's the resonance of the earth outside. That's why everyone says it's so important to get grounded and get outside into nature, because you get this medicinal recharge of our body battery at the appropriate level. Now, these cell phones, let me back up. Electricity is 50 to 60 milligauss or waves per second, 50 to 60 waves per second. Dirty electricity would be 4,000 to 100,000 waves per second. And then wireless signals are 50 million to billions of waves per second. So you can see as we increase the speed of a waveform, that they just start getting faster and faster into the billions of waves. So the gap ends up being 10 zeros difference between how we rev and how a one-directional waveform is working in our environment. And you're right, if we don't see our environment, then we don't really think about it affecting us, unless we're in Los Angeles and you see the air pollution out there. So it's a little different deal. So now, understanding that, there's meters to meter all this stuff. So it's not just me making up these waveforms. When you buy an acoustimeter or a dirty electricity meter or a milligauss meter, they have certain meters that are meant to measure the speed of those waveforms. So that's how we know the difference between them. So it's really simple. Now, if you add 10 zeros, Linda, to someone's bank account, is that a big deal?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So in a good way, I would think. Well, unfortunately, when you add 10 zeros to the speed of a one-directional waveform to our environment, it's a big deal, but it affects us in an array of different ways. And the first of which is cognitive, where we see the most signs are all cognitive. So lack of focus, memory, anxiety, stress, fatigue, headaches, ringing in the ears, lack of sleep. That's where you'll see it. But even if we go back a little further, Dr. Martin Paul out of Washington State University says it affects us at the mitochondrial level, at the cellular level, the voltage gated calcium channels. And that's a group of words that just means that's where right out of the gates, EMFs disrupt that gateway to allow energy to go into the powerhouse of our cell. So right out of the gate, it's an oxidative stress. It calcifies our pineal gland. It destructures water, so it dehydrates us. So 2.45 gigahertz or 2.45 billion waves per second, which is the bandwidth, the starting point for all wireless communications out there, destructures our water. So the faster you go, the more chaos it has in our environment and with us. And then from there, what we see is I would call level 2, which would be non-trauma concussion symptoms, nausea, vomiting, anxiety, stress, seizures, muscle twitching, rashes on the skin, bloody noses, the more severe migraines, ringing in the ears. And then we saw that in the Havana cohort, which was the first attack of U.S. embassy workers on foreign soil with microwave radiation. They call it the Havana syndrome. And then the last level, Linda, would be all the bigs: cancer, suicide, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, cardiovascular disease. And then the biggest one now that we're seeing is, unfortunately, is the infertility.
Wow. So this part of our environment, and when I think of environment, my first go-to is there trash on the sidewalk? Is there pollution in the air? Is there dirt in my water? Things that I can see. But this part of our environment that I cannot see, but that I voluntarily bring into my experience. I'm sitting in front of a computer right now. I have a cell phone. I bring all of these things because they enhance my quality of living. And yet there is another part of it that it can hurt me on multiple levels of severity that are quite frightening.
Yes.
So as you become aware, and let's talk about, because you mentioned the concussions, and I know that you help treat concussions. And I would like, if you wouldn't mind, to talk about the wearable technology and how you've noticed that affecting athletes. Let's give some specific examples of what problems we see and some ways that you have to fix them. I mean, I'm all about hope. So awareness is a very important part of our safety and our well-being, but I don't want people to leave thinking, my life is now over. I've got all these things that are going to destroy me. I want it to be, let's be aware. And now that we're aware, there's something we can do about it.
Yes, and that's a great point. And the main thing is that our physics wise, we can convert a one directional waveform. So we can really transmute or convert these things into things that are beneficial for us and not chipping away at our life force. So the big takeaway is to be aware of your environment, but then, just not give your power away to it too. I first saw this, I guess I should say I had a bunch of learning experiences growing up throughout the years. Even talking on a corded phone when I was little for too long, I would feel pain in my ear. And I was like, what is this? Why does that hurt? It was a corded phone. I was just always really sensitive to electricity. And I'm an applied kinesiologist, so I do muscle testing, and I've done that for several decades. And so when someone has the awareness of energy, I just can feel things. It's more of a gift, even though the sensitivities people would feel it's a curse. I call it a gift because I can feel the resonances of things. And then in college, actually, I did an internship in a commercial real estate firm, and they stuck me around the copy machine. So I was literally copying papers for weeks on end for the brokers and pulling paper off the X-ray machine. And my finger would burn. And that was back when they had really hot X-ray machines. And so you take a piece of paper off, or you make a stack of 100 copies. It's going to be hot, and I'd pull it off, and I'd be like, "Ooh, my fingers are hot," and then I'd just go to the next one. Well, now 30 years later, I have nerve pain in my fingers when I use a touch screen. So I typically, you'll see like anywhere on my desk, you'll see a stylus to use a touchscreen. And I feel a lot of the kids that can type faster on their cell phone with one finger, just going from one letter to the next, can type faster than I can with 10 on my computer. They'll start to see some of those symptoms, unfortunately, in the decades to come. But so when I was working with these athletes, one of them in particular is one of the strongest, fittest professional endurance athletes that I'd seen. And he was wearing a smartwatch. And he said, "Justin, I have pain in my wrist. What do I do?" And I looked down, I'm like, "Well, which wrist?" He says, "Well, it's my left one." And he had a smartwatch on. I said, "Well, yeah, a watch is literally emitting radiation. Let's take that off and see how your arm responds." So the second he took it off, his pain went away. But people were so obsessed with wearing watches, and I was one of them. And I had felt it through just the batteries of watches when I was little throughout the years. And I just didn't think much of it. So once we got the watch off his wrist, his arm started to function again, pain went away. And that was when I knew that this wearable stuff wasn't going anywhere. It was only getting closer to us and stronger signals. And then I had to figure out how to resolve it. So we ended up looking to nature to do that, because everyone looks to nature to ground, right? We go outside and we put a grounding rod in or ground into the ground. So I knew the answer lied in nature. And so that's where we ended up rolling out our EMF Rocks grounding bags and having tremendous success with those.
That is amazing. And I think that, as I read in your website, it's like walking barefoot in the sand in a bag,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. So how are these different than just me putting some rocks in a bag? Is there something you did to them?
No, we didn't do anything to them. We just found the right crystals at the end of the day. Shungite, amethyst, and black tourmaline, they're all the known crystals that help with electromagnetic fields, and they have a resonance to them. They have this piezoelectric effect. But ours have moisture with the magnetic. Those only have magnetic. So these beautiful pink crystals that are hand mined have a resonance with moisture in them. And the combination between the two is what makes them exceptionally amazing for EMF protection. So the way we deploy them, how we mine them and preserve them, we hand mine them, and then how we deploy them to you is why they're so effective for helping people coexist with this non-native EMFs or electromagnetic radiation, EMRs, and allow you to sleep up to, I say, 3 to 60% deeper. And that's what our tests show, third-party independent tests show.
And I did read that research about the independent testing of having that 60% increase in the deep sleep. Right. And I thought, well, that would be awesome. And it was interesting because in the study, he said it did not increase the length of his sleep. The length of his sleep was the same. It was the quality of the sleep that changed. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that is something I hadn't really considered, that you can have the same length of sleep and one does you more good because you have more time in that REM sleep cycle.
Yes. And that goes back to kind of those brainwave states that we clarified in the beginning. When you get into those deeper restorative sleeps, you get 3% in there every night for the next decade. That's significant. I mean, and he was really off and sensitive to his environment. There's something going on in his environment. If he's correcting at 60% consistently, like he's way off. So, But that's what his test showed. And that's just, that's the capacity, the healing capacity, and how medicinal getting outside into nature is. And then the beauty of our products is we're just bringing nature's resonance in your home. So it's a natural approach to EMF protection. It's not a manufactured resonance that's trying to overpower the other man-made resonances. That, to me, I equate that to eating GMO food. Like, why would you want genetically modified food in your system? Why would you want a modified frequency in your environment?
Okay. That's really something to think about. So now, when you talked before about the scalar waves, so then do the rocks just kind of radiate out and then calm the waves that are in my personal environment with our phones and our screens and all of these kinds of things? Is that how it balances out?
Yes, essentially that would be a easy explanation. Eileen McCusick wrote a book called Electric Body, Electric Health. She's written several books, but she has this tuning fork healing system where she clears generational stuck energy in your energy field through tuning forks. And she explains the body as a body battery just really to perfection. You have a negative charge coming from the earth. We get a positive charge from the unpolarized light of the sun. We breathe in minerals from the air. Hopefully we get it from our food. We get minerals and structure and conductivity from water. And if you're missing any one of those components, Linda, our body batteries can get out of kilter. They can essentially get decharged. And the first few areas, your eyes, your teeth, your thymus, your intestines, are the areas that will lose their polarity. They're like the weak links for the body, just like for athletes would be like an ankle or a wrist. Oh, I sprained my ankle. Those are the weak links for the body for EMF. So that's the big part about this. And the cool thing too is the grounding bags, you can tap on them and they act like the homeopathic tincture where when you tap on it, you wake up the molecules inside of it. And then you direct it to your eyes, your teeth, your thymus, or your intestine. So you would tap and then direct it to your eyes, and then teeth, and then thymus. And that'll recharge your body battery and allow you to 10x your energy. So we can change this polarity in our energy system, because when people get decharged, it's really tough to heal. So to me, the first primary, most important thing someone should do is to get outside in nature. It's free, and go touch a tree, hug a tree, if that's your thing, get into bodies of water, just get grounded by nature outside, and then recharge your body battery. And when you're inside, use our EMF Rocks grounding bags in your home to create that coherence in these homes. We call them homes, but they're really electrical boxes that we're living in.
My home is an electrical box. That's so interesting. And we have a charge, negative from the earth, positive from the sun, and it's supposed to flow through. The intelligence in the design in nature is just brilliant. There are so many components there that I was not aware of and that I don't even think about. And yet, as you're saying it, it's just, that is fascinating. That is something I had never considered. And so we need to be able to continue that, the circuit. So it's interesting to think that we are around all of these electronics and we are becoming, we're losing our charge. I mean, it seems like we should be super people with lots of charge. I mean, what's wrong with all the superhero comics I've seen? I mean, a radioactive spider ought to be doing something to me, and I should be having better results, not less.
Yeah, but the thing is so let me say that there's a living collective intelligence matrix between us and our environment. So there's a coherence there, and there's a balance. When you introduce something foreign to that environment, there's disruption in it. And that is what we're being inundated with. So never in the history of our world have we electrified our atmosphere at the level that we are doing it now with 5G and this whole Internet of Things. We've never done it before. And if you look at a book, probably one of the most notable books, it's called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. And he categorized the history of electricity in life. And in 1889 is when we introduced electricity in the homes. And before that, Linda, they called the flu because it would fly in and fly out with solar flares. So any cosmic shifts would allow people to adjust. And not until electricity was here to stay in our homes was the flu here to stay. And then every time there and through history where there are a lot of people that got sick and adapted to these environmental shifts, they were directly correlated with rollouts of non-native waveforms or cosmic shifts. So the non-native ones would be radio waves that were in the 1918 during the Spanish flu era, and then satellites during the Hong Kong flu, and then World War II radar. And then everyone knows we got sick. A lot of people got sick and adapted to our new environment the last several years with the rollout of 5G. So to me, there's no scratching your head on this stuff, because when we're introducing these unique waveforms into our resonance, our bodies are going to adapt when we need to at the level we're capable, and we've all seen a lot of that recently.
So our bodies are adapting to the new frequencies that are being introduced,
right.
And that is it is good that we're able to adapt, but we're having some issues as we're trying to do it, and as we're over inundated. I feel like I'm in a whole other universe here, where there's just all of this information and all of this going on that I have been previously unaware of, things I have not thought about. And it's going to take me a minute to kind of process and to get my head wrapped around it and how this affects me. So the bottom line is, okay, here's what is, be aware. Now, in order to help be healthy, let's spend some time outside. Take your shoes off, get that toes in the sand moment that feels so good, or walk in the grass. But if there is no grass, there is no sand, or it's wintertime, you don't want to take your shoes off, then let's bring some of that nature here, right with us, and bring that into our homes and into our experience to help counter those effects.
Right. And we want to create a coherence. I mean, when you're in a really bright, white, lit up room, it's polarizing. You don't want to stay in it for very long, right? And you definitely can't sleep with those bright lights on. So our bodies have, this is all physics, what we're talking about. And that's why most people don't study physics, so they don't really grasp the concept. But we have, in our bodies, we have a circadian rhythm that's really one with outside. When the sun's up, we're awake. When it sets, it's time to go to sleep. I mean, simple things. That's not a tough concept to understand. But if there's not a coherence between us and our environment, if we're on a TV screen with millimeter waves going and really bright lights, and it tricks our circadian rhythm to think it's still light out for several hours longer. So if you're watching TV till midnight and your body's really not going to get into a deeper sleep for several hours after that. So we got to understand that a coherence with our environment is primary. We have it just within our own system. You feel good. It's like, you know, when you're waking up, you know, when you're eating right, or you're sleeping well, or you had a good night's sleep, or you're hydrated, or you're hungry, or what have you. We have this really intelligence tissue matrix in our body, but then there's also it on a whole nother level with us and our environment, in our universe.
Wow. All right. I would like to hear, if it's okay, some of the applications. I know you treat concussions. What do you do?
Yeah, so I do treat concussions and I actually recharge their eyes first. So I'll have them tap on it and cover their eyes because their eyes get decharged when you get knocked a lot of times. And then NCAA protocol for concussions is no screen time. So they're not supposed to be using their computers, and so students can't really do work when they have a concussion, according to NCAA. So, and the reason is a bright light affects their blood-brain barrier, and so does the millimeter waves, that the resonance of it. So recharging those areas is really the first step for healing. Getting outside of nature is going to be a huge, huge thing to help heal. I use light therapy and I use essential oils and a bunch of others to trigger the nervous system to kind of meet their endpoint, get someone level and center again. And we use light, sound, frequency, vibration to do that because that's how the body really responds. Our cells communicate through light. When you see someone older and at the tail end of their life, they're pale, right? They don't have much color in their skin. And that means the lights are about to go out literally in their body. The cells are saying, hey, we're tired, we're old, it's about time to transition. So, but when you see someone young and healthy, they're glowing, that means they're healthy body. So I use all those different modalities when I work with concussions, but the first thing is just to recharge them.
Wow, that's so interesting. It reminds me of another conversation that I had with someone who was dealing with trauma, helping trauma victims. And he said, trauma doesn't speak English. Trauma speaks in the things that you're describing, in sound, in energy, in waves, through our somatic tissues, through all these different areas. And as we address these things, our body, then it helps clear our mind, how everything is connected.
Yeah. Sorry. And that would be like Eileen McCusick's, her treatments. Yeah. Real similar to that.
That is, I mean, that's a whole new world. That's beautiful. And you help athletes to get their peak performance through using these different modalities.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's the key. You got to work at the nervous system level. You got to work with the nerves, and you got to work with the modalities with how the body works. So if I were a strength coach or even a sport coach, and I'm belittling my student, athlete on the court, I'm going to shut them down. I'm going to shut down their energy systems. That's not going to be giving us the optimal result of performance for our athlete. We got to raise their vibration, not lower it.
And here you mentioned earlier, we're talking about physics. We're talking about physics. These are the laws that we live within, not laws that we voted and chose. They are. These are the natural laws of our environment, of our universe. And yet we have a tendency as human beings, we want to complicate things. So if I am smart, I'm educated, then I need to make things more complicated because it sounds smarter and cooler. And when you're saying, okay, here's the physics, here's the data, and the answer is simplify. Go outside. Be nice. Help to raise the energy. And it sounds like this can't be true because it's too simple.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth. Smiling is the most contagious thing on the planet, right? And it's good for you. So I mean, that's the energy that we like to put out.
Absolutely. Oh, Justin, this has been fascinating. I would even say mind-blowing. Is there anything you want to make sure that we cover before we close today?
Yes. Thank you, Linda, for having me on. And everyone, just make sure you get grounded by nature and get outside because that's our nature.
Thank you. Brilliant advice. In closing, I'd like to share a quote by Dr. Nicholas Marchand. He said, "To me, nature is soothing, the perfect healer. There's nothing better than to immerse in nature when you need some fixing." Today, I invite our listeners to find some way to ground ourselves in nature today. See you next time on Linda's Corner.
Thanks for listening. Please share and subscribe to help us reach new listeners. And if you'd like to heal your life from the inside out, there is a free video series at hopeforhealingfoundation.org. Just click on the Free Stuff tab. I also invite you to grab a copy of one of my books, like Crushed, A Journey Through Depression, and You Got This, an action plan to calm fear, anxiety, worry, and stress. See you next time on Linda's Corner.